So, hello, Steve. Maybe we could just start off with just you sharing a little bit about your experience as a therapist, like how long and um, yeah.
Okay. My background is clinical social work, and I would say that most that I started doing therapy probably over 40 years ago now. So it would have been little bits in around 1978 or 79, a small amount, and then around 1980 that became my primary work. I've worked in different contexts. Yeah, the last, I guess would have been 2012. Would It's been my primary work has been as a private practitioner. Before that, I worked for about 16 years as an employee assistance counselor. And the range of work that I do is I would say individual, couple, and family, although I don't do a lot of family therapy these days, but sometimes, yeah, that's what I do. And I've been doing focusing and having focusing influence my work, and now embracing wholeheartedly, calling myself focusing oriented therapist for 22 years now, something like that.
What does mental health mean to you?
Oh, it's a great question. Okay, I would say that I would look at it in a couple of different ways. But the core of it for me, more than not, and increasingly self accepting and comfortable in one's own skin. So I would call that as being the core of mental health. Now, there are issues around functioning and such, and so that there can be some very difficult states that are depression and anxiety that can really get in the way of functioning. But when I think about health, I think about the core of it being some form of self-acceptance of the good, the bad, and the ugly within our, or the strong and the weak and the shortcomings and the limitations of us. That's kind of the starting point for me, and that's what I aim for
Hmm,
when working with people.
interesting. How does one come about to accept these different parts of ourselves?
I think that there is a good part of it is being in relationships that are able to be accepting of us and helping us to do that in our totality, if you will. So there's that relational aspect. And anybody, and I've been in each chair, the chair of the therapist and the chair of the client. In some kinds of ways, some of our experiences of not having been attuned to and accepted in varying dimensions has left some places that are hurt or have gone into exile. So there's that relational element. And then practices like focusing as one of their dimensions, the focusing attitude. And so then there can be some training of that focusing attitude, and it's similar to mindfulness as well, of acceptance. I tell you a quick story.
Sure.
Once focusing became part of my life, and then it started to impact on my work, of course, a metaphor emerged for me, and I would share it with clients. Which, are you familiar with the hula hoop?
Yes.
Yeah. So I would say, with the image that came is that we each have a hula hoop that's ours, and it's an expandable hula hoop. And so that nobody can expand it really but us, but there are situations that help us to be ready to expand it. The self-acceptance process is expanding the hula hoop to include more and more dimensions of ourselves
Yeah.
and voices and feelings that are connected to that.
It's like a process of coming back to our wholeness.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope that answers.
It does. Yes. And I think it's a really just curiosity of a lot of therapy is very long term. So, yeah, the question is like, how do you know that like the transformation is happening, and how do you know that it's working?
One way to say it is that the client might say, it's easier being me, or something like that. So there's the subjective experience of that. And then there's the other, which is something like entering the same kind of situation and somehow it landing differently. This time, for some reason, when he or she said that, something was different. Still was the same that in that ballpark, but there's something different about me in there. And then there's another, so there's that part of that's a signpost of some transformation happening. And then there's also cleared space inside or in one's life interaction, and we're connected to that to aspire to something else or
Yeah.
long for something, so there's some room for something. So those are signs to me of transformation.
Yeah, it's almost like people have more response ability rather than just reactivity to situations, and
Yes,
also more spacious capacity to have dreams and hopes and wantings.
yes. And there's a wonderful quote, Eugene Gendlin, book from 1996 called The Focusing Oriented Therapy Manual. On page 20 or 21, he has a paragraph that's my favorite, and it goes, "Development happens when." One of the books that's propping up my iPad is that book. Something starts stirring inside. And that fits with what you're talking about dreams and hopes and room for that.
I have a curiosity about something because I know you have a deep background in Judaism. In a lot of spiritual contexts, there's an element of exploring the soul and healing. And it's almost like that a lot of spirituality and things are looking to see beyond our self identification, like a lot of Buddhism and things like
Mhm,
that.
mhm.
So, how do you see the two fit together or its differences?
It is connected to something larger, and that's something larger, or that's some process larger. Could be called soul. There's a danger, and there's a term that's used in the focusing oriented therapy world, in the focusing world, of process skipping. So sometimes we can go to that, and I've got nothing against it, but what we can do is do that in a way of getting away from our pain zones. We can be missing the development of a coherent sense of wholeness of self. Another answer to your question, how do people become more and more self-accepting? Well, if somebody has some kind of practice, whether it's a prayer or a meditation practice, something that helps them to connect with the larger, that relationship with the larger, whatever we want to call it, that connection with the larger, if it's friendly, can help hold and support that experience
Mm.
of the things that are in the hula hoop.
Yes, yes, yes. It gives more resourcing and like almost like
Yes, you got
experiencing, it gives more spaciousness to look at that which is painful inside the hoop.
yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, that resonates so much with me.
I can tell by your smile. Yeah, that it does. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Steve, for taking the time.
Oh, thanks for asking me.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, glad to have done it, and hope it's useful.